Welcome everybody to, I guess, one of the final year webinars of 2025. I don't know about you, Lisa, but it's been a pretty crazy year for pretty much everyone, every company across the entire world. So we made it through, and it's I think it's nice to have a webinar, sort of towards the end of the year because we have, data, right? Everyone has data. They have their own anecdotal experiences to kind of back up today's topic, which again is quick wins for organizations to govern AI securely.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's our half year, but yeah, we still have that kind of, you know, full year, well, full 2 years now of Copilot data, but there's just been so much change in the last, I would say, 4 months. Just huge change, which is fabulous, and everything is just getting better. We always say Microsoft, we're building the plane while we're flying it. So yeah, we've taken off and we're flying, but there's so much change. So, it's really good to come on webinars like this where we hear from yourselves and from obviously Microsoft on what other people are doing is what people want to know. Actually, it's the main thing.
Yeah, and I think I guess like talking about analogies as well, I think Microsoft, they're building the lanes, right? And I think as a cybersecurity company, as CWSI, it's our job to make sure that, it's all secure and it's, people can ride the lane smoothly. But look, with that being said, the webinar is recorded, so I think we'll just kick off in the interest of time. So everyone is very, very welcome, and obviously today's topic we're talking about governing AI security. Okay, so Lisa, maybe if you want to introduce yourself first, ladies first, and then I'll give some background to myself.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Lisa White. I was going to say modern work specialist because it's just such a habit, but I'm an AI workforce specialist at Microsoft covering the Irish market.
Very good. And for everyone who doesn't know, my name is Johnny Sheehan. So I'm one of the practice leads here at CWSI. So I guess secure AI would be my specialty, but obviously my background is in data security, in cloud app security as well. So it's all going to be very, very relevant for today's conversation. And speaking of today's conversation, we can move on to the agenda. So really, guys, there's a lot of talk about, securing AI. How do I adopt AI? How do I use AI properly, right? So in this case, we're going to be talking about Copilot, and we're going to cover how Copilot actually works, okay? Because I think it's very hard to tame a beast, right? And you don't actually know what the beast is capable of. Okay, so the idea is that we can break Copilot down and we can actually make it digestible for you, and you can understand, okay, it's not as scary as I might think it is, or it's not as cumbersome, or there's not as much work involved in securing this, right? And obviously adoption, it can't scale without security. Okay, so we're going to be referencing real-time data from MIT, from Gartner, from Salesforce as well, in terms of what organizations actually struggle with when they're adopting AI and why security can be seen as a blocker. Okay, so we want to see security as an enabler, right? We want to make sure that people can use this technology, because at the end of the day, the technology is here to help us, right? I use AI, Lisa uses AI. I'm pretty sure everyone on this webinar or who watches the recording of the webinar is probably using AI as well. So we want to be able to use these tools and have the confidence that, when we're using them, it's not going to be causing any data leaks or messing up anyone's environment. And then we'll talk about quick wins, okay, and how effectively you can implement those quick wins within your organization. And then Lisa is going to kind of give a brief overview in terms of how we can navigate the future changes in AI, because obviously Lisa is with Microsoft and they are leading the way when it comes to this sort of technology. And then we'll have a Q&A, okay? So the more questions you guys ask, the more informative and interactive the session can be. The Q&A, I like to kind of leave it to the end of the session, right? But of course, if you do have any questions and there is a lull in the presentation, I'll be more than happy to answer them. I don't know, Lisa, if there's anything else you want to add to that, but I think that's covered everything.
No, just ask questions all the way through, and if we don't get to them in the webinar, we'll get to them afterwards. So the more questions, the better.
Brilliant. And for those who don't know about CWSI, right, so our purpose really is to enable the world to work securely from anywhere. Okay, that's really the goal of our organization. So we don't want to be seen as a security partner that slows down adoption, that adds more work to already massive projects. Okay, the idea is that we can tailor your security strategy, and especially when you're looking to govern AI, and actually build a realistic roadmap. Okay, and we're quite, I guess, in tune with Microsoft. Okay, we've been, a Microsoft partner, and we've won various awards from Microsoft as well. I think it'll be on the next slide as well, Lisa, in terms of, the accreditations that we have. Okay, and again, this isn't to, tell people, oh, look at how amazing we are. It's just to give people reference to what we specialize in and what we don't specialize in as well. Okay, so again, my specialization is data security, but again, we actually have an entire practice built around different security pillars, right? So secure identity when you're looking at Entra, secure endpoints for Intune, secure your data with Purview, and then secure operations looking at the security and the XDR suite. And then of course we have the new one, which is secure AI, which takes a bit of pieces from each of the pillars and trying to tie it all together into a nice present. Because in the spirit of Christmas, I guess you can take this webinar and you can wrap a nice bow around it and give it to your different stakeholders within your organization as well, and say, well, look, here's how we might be able to govern, you know, our AI framework for Q4 or for 2026. So we can move on to the next slide, I think, Lisa. And we will get right into it. Okay, so I guess many people, I don't know how many people have actually seen this graph, right, from Microsoft, but it is by far the best and I guess most simple way of describing what Copilot is. Okay, so we have a very clear roadmap, steps 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, so when you're actually prompting Copilot, whether it's in Teams, whether it's for document summarization, whatever it is, there's a process called grounding. Okay, now I'm sure a lot of you have heard about grounding, but what grounding is, it basically tells the AI where it's going to pull its information from. Okay, so from Copilot, you can ground it to your tenant, right? Or you can ground it to your tenant plus the web, so that when it's giving you back that response, right, it's pulling information from your Graph API and from your other tenant sources, or even, you know, if you want to link it to the web, you can, right? So every organization has different requirements, right? Typically, in my experience, a lot of organizations don't want to ground their Copilot to the web, right? Because it's obviously AI is not perfect, it can hallucinate, right? And they only want to use Copilot as an enterprise application purely for work-related projects, right, based off their own data. But the most important thing to know, and I got asked this question by a customer, right, and it was a really good question, because Microsoft promised, right, that your data doesn't leave that M365 service boundary, right? But then they were saying, well, you know, in order for an LLM to give you back a response, right, it has to take your prompt and it has to pull it from, you know, OpenAI, right? Because Microsoft has signed the commercial agreement with OpenAI, so that's where Copilot integrates to. But it's important to note that it doesn't leave your M365 service boundary, right? And it's still within the Microsoft Azure environment. So it's still secure. So OpenAI, the actual company itself, doesn't have access to your data, okay? It's not used to train, you know, whatever agenda that they might have, okay? It's all maintained by Microsoft. And again, RAI, right, which is responsibly AI, is performed as well. So any prompt or responses that you get from Copilot, it's all managed and it's all secure. But the most important thing to note, right, so basically we've covered points 1, 2, and 3. Point 5, which would be very relevant to everyone on this webinar and whoever watches this webinar as well. Point 5, guys, is it's the beauty of Copilot. It's how the post-processing works, right? So Copilot is one of the very few LLMs out there that actually has a pre-processing and a post-processing I guess deployment, right? So your pre-processing is your prompting, your post-processing then is how it interacts with your environment or your user, okay? So whatever security you have set up, whether it's in Purview, right, with your data labeling, your DLP, right, whatever tools you have set up, Copilot will behave, okay? It's not going to break anything, right? And the way I describe Copilot to people is that it's merely a catalyst, okay? So whatever poor security you have, whatever poor access control you have, right, whatever your users are doing that you don't know that they're doing, right, Copilot doesn't know what's right and what's wrong, okay? So that's why it's very important for organizations to make sure that they have a good security framework in place. Okay, so again, we're all about data, right? It's the end of 2025. What data do we actually have, right? Well, according to the MIT report, 95% of Gen AI projects fail. Like that's, to me, that's a very daunting figure, right? 95% of Gen AI projects fail. The 5% that do succeed, right? They have clear security frameworks in place, but they also have clear champions, right? And we're going to talk about this as the webinar progresses, right? But they have champions and they have people who actually want to, okay, I'm going to take whatever AI project that we're doing and I'm going to talk to my IT team. I'm going to talk to the security team. I'm going to talk to different, you know, departments within my organization. And we're going to collaborate together to make sure that we can actually deploy this securely. Because I do believe that this technology, it's here to make our lives easier, right? But there's a great saying in cybersecurity in general, right? It's kind of, you know, as old as time, right? Nobody cares about being hacked until they're hacked. Nobody cares about a data breach until a data breach actually occurs, right? And Copilot, in terms of, you know, any AI tooling that's out there, it is the most secure because it's built into a user's Graph API, but it's still like nothing's perfect, right? And it's your responsibility as organizations, it's my responsibility as a cybersecurity specialist to make sure that people are, whether they're deploying these tools across their whole organization or just across the departments, that they're doing it, you know, securely, and also making sure that they're getting good ROI from it as well, right? So I think we can move on to the next slide, Lisa, because I think this is a nice way in terms of the tools that we can use to actually secure and govern, right, Copilot, right? So one is oversharing, right? So I think a lot of organizations, when they're looking at they're looking at a tool like Copilot, right, and they're talking about LLMs amongst themselves, right? The big thing is oversharing, right? So the idea is you need to pick one of these three kind of pillars, right, and tackle it head on. Okay, so whether your concern is oversharing, whether you want to protect against your data loss or your insider risks, or whether you fall under regulation, right? Whether you fall under NIS2, or whether the EU AI Act is coming in for well, it's already in actually, but it's going to be a second stage is going to be enforced for 2026, and you're worried about that as an organization. The technology exists, right, to help you as customers, to help all of us, right, to make sure that we can actually govern and address any concerns that we might have. Right, and we talk about Purview, and we talk about Defender for Cloud Apps being kind of the bread and butter in terms of gaining visibility into AI usage in general, right? But the most important thing to take away from this is that the technology is there to help us, right, and it's there to enable us, right? It's not there to slow things down. And I will die on that hill, right? Again, I am a big believer that we have to. I guess it's a bit of the American side coming out of me, right? Because you have the EU, which is big on regulation, and you have the American side, which is big on innovation, right? So I think we have to find a good balance here, right? And use technology to make sure that we can regulate, but also make sure that we can innovate as well. So I think we can move on, Lisa, to another slide, which is basically the control system around Copilot, right? So not to focus too heavily on this, because it is just kind of a summary of what I've said. Right, but when we're looking at security and governance, and we're looking at data security and AI security and compliance and privacy as well, right? Everyone has a different role when it comes to Copilot, okay? Because we have our security specialists, right? And then we have the management controls, right? So making sure that you're licensed, right? Making sure that it's set up correctly in the admin center as well, making sure that all of that background process is handled. And then obviously we want to be able to monitor it and measure and have reporting as well. Because the big thing is we don't want to set all of this up and then we don't have visibility in terms of who's prompting, who's not prompting, right? How do I actually have a look under the hood per se, right? That's really important. And again, tools like Purview, tools like Defender for Cloud Apps, right? They're very, very effective at doing that. All right, we can go on to the next slide, Lisa, I think. And then the state of play, right? So this is our data, right? So this is really, really important, right? So we're coming to the end of 2025. So I think a lot of people, right, want to get to a stage where they're optimized, right? In the light green here. Right, everyone starts at a foundational level, okay? And what can you get to a foundational level, regardless of your licensing, right? Well, you can apply standard sensitivity labels, right? You can enable baseline DLP, right? There is a foundational level that we can get to. We can get our customers, right? We can get to internally to make sure, right, that everyone is AI ready, or everyone is at least at a foundation, at a baseline level, right, for AI adoption, whether it's the end of this year or going into next year as well, okay? I don't like telling every customer or everyone that we should all be future ready and we should all be strategic and optimized, because that's not the reality, right? There's a million things going on in different companies, but I think it's getting to a state where, okay, we're here, we're at the foundational level, let's work on getting to an enhanced level. Once we get to an enhanced level, let's work on getting to an optimized level, right? And then eventually we'll be future ready, because as Lisa said at the start of this webinar as well, this is changing very, very fast, okay? And I always tell people, even though I'm an AI practice lead, I'm a specialist in what I know, but there's a lot that I will not know as well. Nobody is an expert per se, right, when it comes to AI, right? It's such a vast technology, and it's changing so fast as well, right, that we can only, do what we know, right, take a step back, take our learnings, and then move forward, right, as the technology changes, right? We have to adapt with this technology as well. Right, so I do believe that everyone, going back to what I said, everyone can get to a foundational level, right? They can get to a baseline, and I think this is a beautiful slide in terms of quick wins as well for organizations from a DLP and labeling perspective as well. I think we can move on, Lisa. And again, this is from the MIT report, so I highly recommend that everyone on this webinar reads this report, okay? It's very, very relevant, especially even if you're a C-suite level as well, right? This is going back to what I said before about 95% of Gen AI projects fail and 5% succeed, but also 90% of employees are using shadow AI, right? So they're using, ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, they're using all of these tools, right? And this is the reality of it. Whether we want to ignore it or not, that's completely up to yourself, right? But users, as I always say, will take the path of least resistance, okay? I know myself, right? We all want to make sure that we can do our jobs quicker, more effectively, right? And save us some time as well. So everyone, you can't expect somebody in sales or somebody in marketing, or somebody, you know, that's outside of the security realm of your organization to really care about security. It's not there, right? And that's why technology like Purview exists, right? Like Defender for Cloud Apps exists, where we can leverage this technology to make our lives as IT professionals easier so that the end user isn't affected. Because the reality is, as we can see from the data, 90% of, and this is globally, by the way, 90% of users are using these tools, okay? It's just a reality. Users always take the path of least resistance. And I'm kind of curious from yourself, Lisa, as well, because obviously, you know, you are with Microsoft. Does this like frustrate you in any way, right? And I think it's because it is quite an interesting statistic, and it's great to have data because, you know, I talk to a lot of people, and the first question I say is, well, are you guys using AI, right? And they go like, oh yeah, we might be. And it's like, well, do you know if your users are using AI? Do you have any visibility? And they say, no, we don't, but we know that people are definitely using AI, right? Because sure, you can block it at a network level, but then where's the innovation, right? Like, again, you have to balance it out, regulation versus innovation, right? You don't want to have missing out on all of this great technology. So again, like, what is there any kind of frustrations that you have, Lisa, on this statistic, or any insight that you might be able to give?
Yeah, it's funny because our work trend study kind of come out with the same kind of metrics. So kind of, I think, well, one in four people are using some sort of AI. So shadow IT is a big problem. And like you mentioned in the last slide about Purview and that internal data leakage, that seems to be the focus. But people, if they haven't rolled out, let's just say Copilot Chat for this instance, which is safe, which has enterprise data protection, and the worry is that they're using, and I talk about this in my section, just that they're bringing their own and they're using their own, and there's hundreds and thousands of apps out there using AI, and their kids are showing it to them. Everybody's using it, so it is. It's definitely not time to bury your head in the sand and let people use what they want, you know, for that secure AI and that risk of external data leakage and PPI or intellectual property getting put into these third-party apps, which are going to come out in someone else's prompt. That's more scary for me. So yeah, there is a frustration when I speak to some customers and they don't have chat rolled out or an official AI tool, and they're just letting people use different apps. And how do you govern that, you know? So yeah.
Well, I think, and you made a really good point there as well, Lisa, about enterprise AI tools, and I think we mentioned it as well, but they are more secure, right, than the non-enterprise AI tools, right? And it's also really important to note that, you know, I've had it before in my own organization where, you know, people ask, well, okay, how are you guys managing AI? Because if we want to work with you, right, if we want to work with you as a vendor, right, and we're giving you sensitive customer information, we know that users are using the path of least resistance. So what are your users, you know, doing with AI? And I can guarantee you a lot of organizations are going to be asked that question by their customers, right? Especially when you're looking at heavily regulated industries like law, like finance, you know, when you're dealing with really sensitive customer information, you need to be able to tell your customers, we only use Copilot, right? And we only use enterprise grade, you know, AI. And if we have a sanction policy around shadow AI, we can see shadow AI, we can see the visibility. And again, you know, if you're audited, if the EU AI Act is being enforced, as they say it will be enforced in 2026 as well, we need to be able to answer these questions. Okay, but at least we have the data. So again, on this slide, before we move on, I highly recommend that everyone reads that MIT report. There's loads of reports out there. MIT was the one that I came across, but again, a very, very good report. And again, going back to quick wins, okay, so kind of the topic of the webinar. So I think the immediate ones that, you know, every organization should look at is champions. Okay, and I think you're going to allude to this in one of your slides later on, Lisa, as well, about Gen Z and millennials and, you know, different, you know, age brackets using AI. I find that Gen Z are very keen on, you know, wanting to champion this new technology, right? When you think about it, they're in college, right? So they were using AI within college. I unfortunately didn't. I was too old to miss out in that way, but I have two younger sisters, and it's it's a completely different college experience to what I would have had. But they're using AI in college, right? So when they're going into the workforce, they almost expect to be able to use AI as well, right? And that's something that as organizations, they need to kind of be in tune to, right? Because again, innovation versus regulation, right? Are you going to tell your new graduates, yeah, we just block all of AI, good luck, right? Well, then again, it goes back to, okay, that's fine. I'm just going to take the internal document, I'm going to email it to myself, I'm then going to work on it on my own device because I've been using AI for the last 5 years, right? So my brain now doesn't, like, I'm hardwired to use AI. So like, that's another thing as well. Users are always going to take the path of least resistance. You have to be aware of that. Okay, so as organizations, if you don't have a policy or a framework or any quick wins around how you're going to actually govern, right, AI, Users are going to get smart. Users are going to get tricky, right? And that's something that I can see being a real problem in 2026 for organizations who aren't taking all of this into consideration. Okay, so the immediate being adopt champions, form a governance board, right? Have audits as well, right? About your current licensing and understand if you're, licensed for Purview, licensed for Defender for Cloud Apps, understand what exactly it is you can use, right? Understand what technology you can use, because there is a way regardless of licensing, okay? Regardless of what licensing you have, there are quick wins that we can do. Yes, you're limited, right? If you're on older licensing or you're not on licensing that, might be, for example, an E5 compliance bolt-on, right? Which gives you the full Purview stack or a lot of features within Purview, right? If you don't have that licensing, there is still a way that we can get you to a foundational level, right? And again, map sensitive data, that's kind of a standard, right? Understand how your data is traveling, right? Whether you're a Microsoft house, whether you're a Google house, whether you're AWS, however it is, understand the process around your data, right? And then the short term then, right? So once you've established your immediate, okay, here's what we need to focus on right now, right? Short term then, how exactly are we going to move forward from here? Well, an example would be, okay, we're licensed for Purview. Brilliant. Let's have a look at sensitivity labels. Let's have a look at DLP, right? And actually, let's have a look at how we can safeguard and protect our data from Copilot, okay? And also leverage, again, Defender for Cloud. It's a beautiful tool for shadow AI. I understand that not everyone is going to be licensed for it, but again, it's just something to research and understand what is out there, right? And that, again, can be a part of a short-term goal. And then you can publish policies as well and pilot usage, right? So I'm a big fan when you're deploying AI and you're looking to govern AI within your organization, and it links back to your immediate ones as well. Take your champions, take your Gen Zers, and say, okay, look, I know you've been using AI for the last 4 years, okay? We have enterprise licensing, okay? We've bought, let's say, 200 Copilot licenses, okay? We're going to deploy 10, right? We're going to give you one, and we're going to, let you manage a team of 10, right? And you're just going to try and break Copilot. You're going to see what's working. You're going to see what's not working, right? And then give us feedback, right? And then we build a template, and then we move it out per department, okay? So it's a structured approach, because again, when we're talking about security, we have to make sure that we don't overwhelm people, we don't overwhelm customers, and we don't overwhelm ourselves as well. I think when it comes to actually delivering, good ROI from Copilot, whether it's Copilot M365, whether it's Copilot security, it doesn't matter, okay? It's understanding what's immediate, what's short term, and then of course we want to get to a place where we're ongoing, okay, where we can automate policy enforcement, and we can even use tools like Defender for Cloud Apps, and look at even getting granular conditional access policies within Entra as well. And then champion led. So again, this is going to be a big one when we're looking at champions, right, for Copilot. It's very important to know that if you were to give this responsibility to somebody, right, they're going to take that, right, and they're going to evolve with it. So they're going to evolve with the technology, and that's something that you have to understand as an organization as well. I think you just zoomed out there, Lisa. Oh, we're back. Are we back? Brilliant. So yeah, like, it's important to know that. No, you're okay. So when we have people that we're going to give this responsibility to, right, they're going to evolve with this technology, and it's important to look at when you're looking at champions, it's looking at forward-thinking people, right? Where is this going in 6 months? Where is this going in 10 months? Where is this going in 2 years? Okay, because that's going to save you a lot of headache in the future as well, right? So again, immediate, short-term, and ongoing. And I think then we have the final sort of part to kind of tie this up is the common Copilot use cases. Right, so this is based off data, okay? So everything that we see here, guys, it's not just pulled from, my anecdotal experience or customers' anecdotal experience. This is all pulled from Microsoft and actually what people are using Copilot for, right? So I think the first one, which I think is the most common, right, is summarizing documents. I think that's not a surprise to anyone, okay? And typically we find knowledge work is doing that, whether it's generating meeting notes or Teams transcriptions as well. But the idea of, looking at this and why we want to show this to you guys is there's always a security risk, right, linked to each of these use cases, okay? Now, some are, quick wins, they're easy to implement, but it's good to know, okay, what people are actually using this for and what you can use it for as an organization as well. Okay, even if you're thinking of embracing Copilot or any, AI tool in general, right? Here's what the general population, the global population, are using AI for. Okay, so I know myself when I'm using AI, the biggest thing that saves me, right, when I'm using Copilot anyway, is meeting notes. Okay, because I could be in a meeting and there could be 16 people in front of me, and you're like trying to take down on the notepad, or you're trying to take down little notes or whatever, so you can just have the transcript recording and away you go. You can focus on the meeting, okay? But it's to make sure, okay, once whoever records that meeting, right, that then gets saved to their OneDrive or could get saved to a SharePoint site, and then it's like, okay, well, if a user prompts, right, can anyone get access to that meeting, right? If it's a C-suite meeting and they're talking about high level stuff or critical company stuff or the direction of the company, right, and they hit record, right? Where are those transcripts being saved to? Are they being saved to a general SharePoint site where anybody with Copilot can then prompt and they accidentally get the meeting transcript, right? It can be very, very, the way this can go is it can be very good, and then it can go to, oh my God, we are having an internal data breach. Okay, and again, it goes back to nobody cares about being breached until they're breached. Okay, and another thing to know, to conclude my part, I guess, is Copilot is different for everybody, right? So it's an amazing tool, right? And it's very, very powerful. But my Copilot is different to Lisa's Copilot, or a better example would be my Copilot is different to a salesperson's Copilot in my company, and Lisa's Copilot is different to her colleague's Copilot, because we all have different access control levels. Okay, and again, going back to that first, how does Copilot work? It works with my Graph API. It's unique to me. It's my co-pilot. It's my co-partner, right? It's for me, right? It's very unique to me, right? And that's very important for you guys, right? When you're looking to deploy Copilot or secure Copilot, is that it's going to be different for everybody, right? And you have to look at the access control first, okay? So I think that sums up my part, Lisa. Conscious, I can talk about this for, I can talk for Ireland, right? I can talk about this for hours, but you're gonna take us off now with the UI for AI. So take it away.
Yeah, exactly. So kind of doubling down a little bit on kind of what you spoke about. So in Microsoft, we want Copilot to be the UI for AI. So we want it to be the interface that people are using for all the AI in the company. And as you say, and you said very eloquently, the Copilot control system kind of, and responsible AI kind of surrounds everything. So everything is built with our Secure Future initiative in mind, designed by default. Absolutely. It's our, I wouldn't say it's our USP, but it's definitely within Copilot chat and paid for Copilot. The enterprise data protection is the big reason why people are going to Copilot or using it, as well as that kind of integration with, as you said, the graph. So when I sign in as me, I don't have access to any more than I would have, but I do have access to files that have been shared with me or are saved as public on the web or on SharePoint. And also in Microsoft, like as we always say, we're drinking our own champagne. So we actually lock down a lot more now since AI, since 2 years ago. So we zero trust. We create everything as confidential. So if you want to share something out or change it, you have to change it to general or public, and that allows you to share it out. But that means that it's not available to everybody. If I create a nice deck, everybody won't be able to see it unless I kind of change the label. So I have meetings day in, day out with C-suites, and as I mentioned earlier, the frustration of those who bury their head in the sand, but also IT leaders. So business decision makers are struggling to quantify and integrate AI and understand where it fits in the organization. And I think a lot of them are seeing it as an IT tool, so it's landed on the IT team, another tool, but it's actually a business tool. It's not an IT tool, and giving IT an extra hat is not going to help get it rolled out any quicker. It actually gets stuck in IT, we're feeling. So definitely the customers that have gone further in their IT journey have given someone the role as the champ of champs or AI transformation lead. So that's a big problem that I'm seeing, and I can see those who have put a little bit of weight behind it kind of transforming a lot quicker. Obviously, the security, governance, and regulatory requirements are hugely top of mind, and there's certain personas in the organisation that are really worried about this. The CISO, the DPO, so that again, that kind of internal data leakage conversation. If they have E5 and they haven't configured Purview, if they don't have Purview, definitely something to consider. But the biggest risk, I would say, is that kind of not giving them a safe AI tool to use and them using third-party apps. That's the biggest problem. And on to the next one, which end users are seeking out their own AI tools. So definitely something to look at.
Yeah.
Exactly, as you say, yeah. And then just business processes, transforming those, that's what people want. And you mentioned, in the journey, whether rolling it out like department by department, I find actually one of our customers, a very good customer of mine, did a Dragon's Den competition for use cases for agents and AI in the org, and went out and actually shortlisted the use cases and presented it to the C-suite, and then they had a partner lined up to help build out them. So I thought that was a fantastic idea. We don't want it to get stuck in IT. We don't want certain we want a look at the whole org and where can we find these kind of low-hanging fruit quick wins for integrated processes that are happening. But again, this is, and I'll show you a quadrant later about quick wins, this is probably a little bit down the track. So I wanted to talk about SAFE, which is secure AI for everybody. Access, providing access to AI for everybody, a safe tool. Governance, which I know Johnny spoke a lot about, and then skilling. So on the access, and this is what I said, this kind of equates to kind of what you were saying in the MIT report, Johnny, and that 75% of people are using AI at work. And they, 46% of them started less than 6 months ago. So the horse is bolted now, people are using it. So how do we kind of rally the troops and make sure they're using a safe AI? And this is the lovely slide you were talking about. I'm a millennial by the skin of my teeth, but I'm there. But again, the boomers, like we had an example of a customer, I won't mention their name, but there was older employees that were probably in the boomer category, and AI has hugely helped them. And there was a particular lady that had dyslexia, and she never disclosed it to anybody, but after she was given an AI tool, she was just so happy, and it was fantastic to see that had affected her life and for so long, and then it helped, and it helped her so much she was happy to talk about it, which is fabulous. But again, people are using it and it's not provided by the organization. So path to least resistance, they're using some sort of AI tool. And so introducing Copilot Chat, I'm sure everybody knows about it. So we have chat, which is now included, in anybody with an Entra ID can have Copilot Chat. It's web grounded, which is fantastic. You can add in certain files, and it is going to be available in the M365 apps, just on a limited basis, but it will be available. Those users can use agents. So you can build agents that your users can use. It will be on a consumption basis. But again, if you want to build, example might be a HR agent, and everybody in the org can use it without being fully licensed. So so that's nice. And then again, you have all that lovely enterprise data protection, agent management controls. The buzzwords I'm hearing lately is agent lifecycle, agent sprawl, managing agents, that sort of thing. So again, you still have that that control as well. And then the 3-in-1 capability. So Copilot has 5-in-1, the paid for version, but the Copilot Chat has 3-in-1 capabilities, being chat, agents, and now create as well. Obviously 5-in-1 is so what you're getting extra is notebooks, which is equivalent to ChatGPT projects, which is fantastic and only getting better, going to be shareable. So if anyone hasn't used a notebook and they have a paid for license, do go and have a look at that, have some videos, look on Microsoft Learn and learn about that. And then Create as well. We're finding Create is fabulous. People are loading up their brand packs up there and creating really good stuff and videos in line with the brand, which is fantastic. So this is the feasibility matrix that I mentioned for quick wins. Because the theme for today was quick wins, I definitely wanted to share this, and this is what I'm talking about with my customers all the time. And it's kind of the matrix of business impact. So you can see on the bottom it's time and effort, and on the side it's impact. And I'll click onto the next slide, which will give us examples. So in quick wins, you have the top models, the top OpenAI models in chat as well. GPT-5 is coming to chat if it hasn't already. So they can use it to deep research. So marketing, product, legal can all use it. And you can use it just for internal documents that you have, or you can look to the web, but very much tie down what you're talking about in deep research. And then obviously if you have a paid for version, you can use Researcher, which is at the absolute star of the show. It gives PhD level responses. It's fantastic. Obviously document compliance as well is something. Personalized marketing outreach. So you mentioned earlier about salespeople and how they would use it, and you mentioned about Johnny, you mentioned about recording calls. I mean, it's just fantastic when Copilot is capturing the notes. You're so engaged with the conversation. You're not worried about you know, writing down notes, capturing what the customer is saying. You can be fully engaged in a really rich conversation, and then Copilot's got your back, and within minutes the customer has an email. You know, you can update your CRM, you can create tasks. Like it's just so time saving for salespeople. There's really good data on that as well. And responding to RFPs as well is really good use case. And if you're responding to a tender or you have to do a pitch, you know, you can ask Copilot to give you questions to practice your pitch in line with that customer's or that company's, you know, corporate social responsibility, or, you know, whatever. So that's a really good one. And then if we switch over to strategic bets, so this is the one where you might redefine a business process. It's going to take time and effort, but it will have high impact. So again, redefine a business process, creating agents, any kind of automation, anything where you know, you're not hiring your head count, you're not hiring someone for this. You can actually use the people that are there to be the human in the chain for these agents and things like that. And then on the lower side, tactical improvement, so low time and effort but low impact. So that might be a knowledge retrieval agent, data visualization, that kind of personal assistant kind of role of that AI is playing in all our lives, I would say. And then I kind of did talk about, and I know this isn't an agent kind of webinar, but I did want to kind of just talk a little bit about the agents, because that's where we are. We're moving from personal assistant to agents and then to autonomous agents. So if you're looking for immediate impact, looking at researcher, an analyst, I didn't mention that. That's like having a data scientist in your pocket, really important. Where you get in the middle there, where you get customized and configured agents, so you can have an agent for Copilot, or sorry, for finance reconciliation. The out-of-the-box self-service agent should be there as well. So that's where you tie it into maybe ServiceNow for ticketing, or where they order their own laptop or something like that, which is really cool. And then we're going into custom agents, and this is actually, I'm sure we can share the slides afterwards. This is in the Microsoft Scenario Library, and it's real life customer examples of how Estee Lauder has used agents for customer insights. CSX has used it for shipment tracking, which is a huge time, you know, huge time thing in there, and they've done that. And then a medical assistant as well for CHU Montpellier. So that where, you know, you have trained nurses maybe answering questions on a phone line. If you can automate that, that's going to be a huge time saving as well. And for the customers, they're serviced a lot quickly. They're not waiting on phone lines as well.
I think on that as well, Lisa, sorry to, because I think there's a very important point there, right? I think, guys, when we're looking at quick wins, okay, there's quick wins for regulation, and then there's quick wins for innovation, okay? So I think what Lisa highlighted brilliantly there is when you're looking at agentic AI, right, that's your innovation, right? That's you being, you know, at the forefront of where, because AI, the way it's going to be agentic AI. Okay, so you can do quick wins for that, but also, like, one I can think of off the top of my head for regulation is, as Lisa mentioned, it's EDP, right? Enterprise data protection, right? So how you get around that, right, from a cybersecurity lens, is that you go into Entrée, you build a conditional access policy so that people are forced to sign in via their work account, right? Whether they're using Chrome or Edge or whatever your native browser is. Now it depends if you have a BYOD policy or not, but the idea is that you can get visibility into that, right? And that's a quick win for regulation, right? Just having a conditional access policy so that people are forced to sign in, and therefore EDP kicks in. It could be a DLP, it could be a label, whatever the case is. And then on the other side, a quick win for innovation. And I know agentic, it's the hot topic right now, right? But it can even be enabling Copilot M365 across your whole organization, to the point where, as Lisa said, it's not just IT using it, right? It's sales, it's marketing, it's CISOs, it's C-suite, right? Everyone's using it for their own, you know, goals and their own objectives. I think that's really, really important, right? To understand, right? Do we want a quick win for innovation, quick win for regulation? Do we want both? Right, and that's where, you know, the real conversation is happening then, where it's like, right, we really want agents, but we really need to understand how can we secure those agents, right? How can we make sure that agentic AI is safe for everybody, right? And I think a lot of people, probably the most popular one that everyone's going to start off with is going to be M365, right? An enterprise AI tool, because even moving, like, another quick win, right? They're all coming to me now, right? It's another quick win is that you can move people away from your shadow AI, right? And you can get them onto your enterprise AI tools, right? That are secure, right? As we saw by Copilot within that M365 service boundary. So the way I would look at AI, concluding 2025, even though we still have, we're the 12th now, so we still have a month and a half left, right, to make some changes. But going into 2026 as well, right, just having a process around, right, we're going to adopt Copilot for M365. Okay, that's a quick win for innovation because we're now using the technology, right? So Copilot's great, right? It has that, guardrail by default that a lot of AI tools don't have, but it's not perfect in the sense that your organization is different for a variety of reasons, and it has different departments as well. So you need to secure that, right? You need to understand how your data is working and need to get visibility into your data as well, right? So then that's a quick win for regulation. So quick win again, right? We're going to adopt Copilot. Brilliant. That's innovation. Okay, the regulation side, we're going to deploy DLP and labeling, right? Or we're going to look at purview, right? Or we're going to do whatever we got to do in order to meet that regulation standard. Because again, another thing with the EU AI Act is they're going to ask like, well, like what's the process around AI? How are you handling AI? Right. And, even if you don't have these, tools implemented yet and you don't have perfect labeling, you don't have perfect DLP, or you don't have Defender for Cloud Apps, just having EDP or visibility about what people are doing, and even telling an organization, yeah, we don't have any, security in place at the minute, but we know that 85% of our users are using ChatGPT. That's a win. Right. I know it sounds like, well, how is that a win? Well, you have visibility, you know what your users are doing, right? The last thing you want to tell anyone, whether it's an auditor, your customer, whatever it is, what are you doing for, how are you managing AI? We don't know. Well, like, are your employees using AI? We don't know, right? It's almost like, when you're doing a test, right, and you're running out of time, and you just have to tick all the boxes, right, to make sure, because like no answer, it's instantly wrong, right? But at least if you put something down, right, if you make some attempt, right, at least you have a chance of getting it right. Right. And that's really, really important, I think, for everybody to take away from this, is that whether you're looking for innovation or regulation as well, whatever quick win you're looking to get, I think that's it's going to be very, very relevant for 2026. So we are in our Q&A section, right? So as I said, if you guys have any questions or anything that you want to ask us, right, please feel free to drop it into the chat, right? But I think you can also skip ahead, Lisa, to some of these slides here, because we can talk about a bit, how we can help and sort of the next steps, right? So again, if there's any questions, right, it saves, because I hate being on webinars and the speakers they stop talking and they wait for people to ask questions, right? I said, I'm not a big fan of keeping people hostage on the call, okay? So I'm always a fan of, right, if we need 5 minutes back to have a tea or a coffee or a cigarette, whatever it is, by all means, go ahead, right? But just to kind of conclude the webinar, how we can help, okay? So we do what is called a Copilot readiness assessment. So again, if you're an organization and you're thinking about adopting Copilot or using Copilot, or you want to, even just have a conversation about Copilot, we look at your entire stack, right? So we look at your identity, right? So being your Entra, your devices, how you're managing your devices and Intra, and your data and Purview, Defender for Cloud Apps, your security suite, right? Looking at Sentinel, looking at the XDR portal, looking at the admin center, looking at the Teams admin center, looking at the SharePoint admin center, going through your entire, I guess, tech stack as an organization and understanding, all right, what access control is actually set up. Okay, because the last thing you want to do is look at adopting a new technology, and as Lisa said, you have people who, rightly so, by the way, right, are concerned about, it could be the DPO or the CISO, and they're like, well, like how, like what's going to happen to our data, and what's the potential risk here, right? So it's good to understand where you guys, like from a security level, where you guys are at, right? So this is developed so that we have a best practice, right, kind of level, so that, for an example, your data security, right? We do 10 checks. Do you have labeling? No. Okay, 0%. Do you have DLP? No. Okay, 0%. Do you have retention and communication compliance? Yes. All right, 2% or 1% or 10%, however it is, right? So then you get a score, right? Your data security is 70%, it's 40%, it's 80% ready, right, to adopt Copilot. Every organization is going to be different, right? I'm not going to be that guy that says that everybody should get to 100%, right? Because everybody has a different risk level, right? Or risk appetite, I should say. So it's understanding, right, how comfortable are you guys, right, with adopting this new technology, with adopting AI, right? And then, of course, Microsoft, and I'm sure Lisa and all the guys at Microsoft as well, they have all of these brilliant programs that some customers qualify for, other customers might not qualify for. But again, it can be getting you up on the ladder, right, in terms of, okay, how can we actually start our Copilot journey? And I just see a question in there from Mr. Kumar. So, hi, can you brief about Copilot licensing part? I mean, what exact licensing do we need? Is that tenant specific or user specific? It's a very good question. So licensing, it's I think it's a jungle of a conversation. Okay, so the way licensings work is that you have your Copilot for M365 licensing. You have, I think Microsoft are doing they're changing it a lot, but I know before, if you were to buy an E5 licensing, they'd offer Copilot licensing at a discount as well. It really depends on what your goal is. So from a security perspective, if you wanted to adopt the Purview suite, you could just use an E5 compliance bolt-on licensing. Okay, so I think every organization is going to have a licensing specialist, a licensing reseller. As I said at the start of the webinar, right? Licensing, we don't sell licensing at CWSI. It's not something that we're particularly versed in. But it's a good question to mention because it leads into the quick wins, and you're doing the immediate action right now, which I think is a slide. I forget what number slide it was in the webinar, Lisa. But looking at your licensing and preparing, okay, what licensing do we actually need? Right. So once you talk to one of those experts about your current licensing setup, right, that's a quick win for regulation. Okay. But again, just full transparency, I'm myself I'm no licensing guru. I don't know about yourself, Lisa, if you can add to the conversation.
Well, yeah, because I'm not technical, I kind of have to be a licensing guru. So I can see the questions actually because I'm a panelist and not an organizer. But yeah, I wasn't sure whether it was licensing on Copilot or licensing on the Purview piece. But yeah, talk to your specialist at Microsoft. You'll have an equivalent if it's me for the Irish market, or you'll have an equivalent in the UK. And also your CSP or your LSP will be able to help. But yeah, obviously, whatever license you are, if you're an E3 and you want to do a lot of the stuff that Johnny spoke about, it is E5 compliance bolt-on or full E5. And then for the Copilot one, chat is included in any licenses with Entra ID, and also the paid for Copilot as well. You need to speak, every customer will be different. So yeah, you'll need to speak to someone on that one as well.
Yeah. And I think David just had a question there as well. So will the recording of the session be shared? Lots to take in. Yes, absolutely will, David. So our trusty marketing team over at CWSI will be sending you a copy of the recording and a copy of the deck as well. Right. So everyone will get a copy of this. And yeah, I agree. There is lots to take in. Okay. Like it's one of these conversations and one of these topics where, everybody talks about it and then they go away and nothing, really gets done, or people are afraid that nothing might get done or whatever. So even on the first question, which I think was a brilliant question about licensing, right? That's a starting point. You've already had a quick win, right? And again, there's going to be different customers that watch this and different people, and everyone's going to be at different levels as well. So understanding what level you're at and what questions you need to ask as well is going to be very, very valuable, right? I think anyway, especially from a security point of view. Yeah, no issues, David. My pleasure. And yeah, like again, the security and compliance expertise, guys. So there's, as myself, I'm a data security guy. I'm a what's it called, Defender for Cloud Apps guy as well. So I'm very relevant into governing AI and protecting AI. So if you want to have a chat with myself, you absolutely can. I think we have a QR code, Lisa, for people to scan on their phones. We can just leave that up here for the remaining 9 or 10 minutes for there. So that's just a questionnaire, guys, right? So it's going to be individual for every organization, but you can identify and how you can strengthen your security foundations. And again, the reason why we do security, guys, is to enable that adoption with AI. It's to get that ROI back, okay? Because like we're not doing this security for nothing, right? The idea is that Copilot can make your life easier, right? Whether you're an employee or a customer, whatever the reason is, but you want to be able to tell people with confidence, yeah, we have a process around our data. Yeah, our tenant is secure. Our company is secure. We're using AI. We're using it very, very well. It's saving us a lot of time, but our customers trust, right, that we're using it responsibly. Right, and I know internally that we're using it responsibly as well. Okay, so we'll leave this up for a couple of minutes just for people to scan. But if there's no other questions, Lisa, I don't think there's anything else for myself to add. As I said, guys, you can message me on LinkedIn. Marketing will send over my email as well if you have any more detailed questions about the architecture of Copilot or how it works, or anything about cybersecurity and to govern that. I'm more than happy to assist. But Lisa, I don't know if you have any final thoughts or anything else you wanted to add.
No, I think we could talk all day, to be fair. I think we've landed lots of messages here today. I think your expertise shines through in the knowledge that you have, and CWSI as a partner, I only hear amazing things. So definitely, if someone's looking for a security partner, I would recommend top of the list CWSI. I think the I think the tools are built in, but there's a lot of questions I get about the configuration of the back end. So again, here in Microsoft, a hands-on partner like CWSI will help expedite the journey and tick all those AIEU boxes. Get your users trained, give them a safe tool, and don't just give them a license and don't teach them how to prompt, because if they don't prompt correctly, they'll get annoyed and they'll go back to using what they used to use. So that's really important. Defender for Cloud Apps, you mentioned, is a fabulous product. I think that's a really good one. If you want to know more about that, we could do a deep dive in with myself or with Johnny and the CWSI team as well. But yeah, just reach out for help. Just do the follow-ups.
Yeah, and I think if I could conclude my last piece, it would be champions, guys. Definitely look for champions in your organization. Look for Gen Zers or anyone really. Look, it doesn't matter what age they are, right? The reason I say Gen Zers is because they're more closer, I guess, to the technology, if you want to say, right? They've just about grown up with it. They haven't really grown up with it, but you know, they're kind of they've had it in college at least, right? So look for people and ask them how they're using AI and what they're using it for, right? Look for champions, because I do believe that's going to help you out massively, right? Not from a security perspective, but from an adoption perspective, right? In terms of how you're actually going to use this, and look for people who are, well, I've got this idea where we can, you know, build an agent to do this, and I've got this really cool idea where we can do this. And if your environment is secure, you can have those conversations, right? You can have those innovation conversations and push yourself forward as an organization. Plus, it's really cool technology. You know what I mean? Like it's like we're living in one of the what's it like the next? I'm a bit too young, I think, for the .com bubble. I think it was 2000, 2001 or something like that. At least I can't remember because I was.
Made me feel old about 10 times call you have, but yeah. When I remember coming home from primary school and saying, "Oh, there's this thing called the internet." So yeah, I'm really old, but yeah, it is.
Internet
And
yeah.
Yeah, and there was a blog release last week from Jared Spitato. I can never say his name right. He's the head of marketing for Microsoft, and he's saying that the expectations on people graduating college is that they come in and they're not an intern. They're literally coming in with AI skills and coming in the middle level, you know. So there's huge expectations on those graduating at the moment, because they have the skills of prompting and using technology from a very young age. So there's huge expectations on them as well. And then, as you say, as a hiring tool, if you have a safe AI tool available to them, so they can hit the ground running as well.
Yeah, no, really well put. So look, I think if there's no other questions, guys, as I said, I don't like keeping people hostage. You're more than welcome to message me individually. And as I said, everyone will get a recording of this webinar. I hope you found it useful. I hope you took some learnings from it. Okay, and more importantly, I hope everybody has an amazing Christmas if you do celebrate the holidays. Right? It's crazy to think that 2025 is almost over in a way, right? But it's been a very, very productive year for everybody. So thank you again for tuning in. Lisa, I must again thank you for collaborating with us as well. It's always great to speak from I guess outside of Microsoft and getting people from Microsoft to come in as well and help us out with these. So very much appreciated.